Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Documentary Club. I'm Jeff Jones, and with me, as always, is Jack. Like and subscribe if you enjoy our discussions. And speaking of Jack, how are you doing today? Nice to see you. Welcome.
Yeah, doing good. This is I guess harder documentary to go through and kind of take apart, pull apart, and review because of just the nature of what it is, which we'll get more into.
The documentary that we're talking about today is MH370, the plane that disappeared, that captivated our attention, I think worldwide attention for months on end.
Years,
Where is
actually.
this plane? Years. Where is this plane? Where could it have gone? So many conspiracy theories have stemmed from this. So many different theories have been established, and basically, we still just have no idea to this day. Spoiler alert, sorry. The reason I would recommend this documentary is especially for people who don't know the story about MH370, for all the reasons that you just said, Jack, just to kind of remember that, you can just, it can happen. Think people can just disappear. I mean, we have other examples of boats disappearing, planes, but nothing to this level and nothing as a commercial airliner like this. So for people out there, why I would recommend this documentary would be if someone's interested in starting to learn about this topic, or they don't know anything about the missing airline. I would not recommend it for people who have panic attacks or who are fearful of flying. Let's put it that way, because
No.
this is your worst nightmare. Um, and it was the worst. It was the worst nightmare for a lot of the family. And this documentary covers a lot of the reaction from the family and from the public, and so it can be gut-wrenchingly difficult to get through at some points. But I would recommend this to anybody who wants to know more about MH370, flight MH370.
So much about this flight simply doesn't add up.
And very suspicious cargo could be at the heart of what happened to MH370.
That's really the first point that I'd like to make about this case in general, and I'm sure that I'll mention it again, is that when things can't be explained, when basically any major event, world event, there is a percentage of the population that will never believe the truth, even if it bit him in the face.
Yep.
And there are some people that will say everything that ever happened is always a conspiracy all the time. I'm not one of those people, but I can see how an event like MH370 or 9/11 or another world tragedy like that can seem, this must be planned. This must have been planned out. And so with all of the conspiracies that have spun off, I think I remember hearing one at the time, and I hope I'm not mistaken this, that these people were hijacked and exploded over Russia, and you know what I mean? There's just so many different theories and ideas that we really got to, personally, I try to ground myself, no pun intended, in the science, right? And just using scientific evidence, because there's so many situations where you're like, well, that could have happened. Well, this could have happened. Well, and I think you tie yourself into knots when you do that.
Well, yeah, and this flapron or whatever you call this thing that they found. Of course, we learn far more about it later on. And the detail that they went into to identify this thing as coming from MH370 is really interesting too, because there was a real in-depth look at this significant piece that was eventually found.
We need a little bit more background information, a little bit more about the flight. So let's learn a little bit more about the flight.
So the flight was a red eye from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing. Fly through the night and arrive in Beijing around dawn. There were 227 passengers.
370, 32 right of takeoff. Nice.
Last thing he said was, "I love you."
the way she expressed her pain right there was a physical reaction of shaking her hand, like trying to shake it off, like when you injure yourself.
It's an emotional memory that is, like I said before we started.
Physical response, yeah.
That's right. They're frozen in this space of time. It's locked in, and it's an indelible memory that will never, probably ever get shaken. The pain might be a little bit less or change its form, but it's always there. It never goes away.
And I don't think that we'll be able to appropriately address that side of it. We can, I really recommend you guys watching the documentary full length to get that effect. We're going to come in and talk about the major plot points, but to really understand the pain and suffering is just to really watch this documentary throughout, because, as we said, spoiler alert, it's never been found. The name of the documentary is This Plane That's Never Been Found. These people are not coming back.
It falls into the unknown. And, I'm not saying this for, sympathy or anything else, but having lost a child, we know what happened. That's one thing. These people don't know years later where their family, what happened to their loved ones, friends. It's crazy, man.
Oof. So anyway, I just wanted to make a comment on that. It's like, it's not lost on us how much heartache this caused. And we watch documentaries in our leisure, and a lot of times there are victims of crimes, and we don't want to be callous about that. And we want to represent the human emotion and the pain that this has caused. And I think that speaks to the next kind of turn in the plot, is like, you want to blame someone, don't you? Don't you want to blame someone? Because wouldn't it feel better if you could blame someone?
Something.
And
put your finger on something.
That's right. And I think the lack of having any facts about the case and the ability to not be able to just blame someone or know who to blame. Maybe that's the quote. We don't really know who to blame, so we'll just blame the airline. We'll just blame the radar operator. We'll just blame everybody who is in contact with this, even though it might not have been their quote unquote fault, right?
Correct.
And I think it's natural. I think it's a natural response. I don't know if it's always the logical response, but it is, I think, natural. So let's play the clip of the plane going off radar.
41 minutes past midnight, the plane takes off. Everything's very calm. It climbs to cruising altitude.
370, maintaining level 350.
The plane is about to leave Malaysian airspace.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night, Malaysian 370.
And then 90 seconds later, the plane suddenly goes electronically dark.
90 seconds after he signs off, something happens. That's really fast. Something funny could happen.
It did.
It would be in that handoff.
Yeah, from Malaysia handoff to Vietnam.
This is looking good for the conspiracy people here now, because that's one. I'm going to give him 1 point towards nefarious already.
Something weird for sure.
It's that 90-second window that's really important to me there, because
there are other. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there are other factors that play into that for me. I'm with you. I don't want no big conspiracy stuff going on. I want an explanation, one that I can buy into and believe that, yeah, okay, I can go there. But
I guess what I'm saying is something happened in the and who would have knowledge of that handoff, that switch off? The pilots, the two pilots. This is episode 1, by the way. It's called The Pilot. So we can let the documentary unfold, but I just wanted to make that point that, I've seen too many movies where it's like, we're going to rob the bank. When are we going to rob the bank? They switched the security guard. Oh, okay. Like, it just seems so obvious to me. When are we going to make the plane go away? Or when do I have an opportunity to mess with the plane in this buffer zone where we switch signals? I'll say goodnight, and then in the disruption, they won't know. I don't know.
Because they're, at this point, relatives have arrived. They've called these people, friends, whatever, and they shuttle them off to this particular room at this hotel. And the media is already exploded. Now it's even worse. So I think this is a kind of a short clip, that 1933, because it's insane.
All right, so let's watch some of this about the media coverage.
They're growing increasingly frustrated by the lack of information about their loved ones.
各种的这个哭声、喊声，家属呢很多家属就会只能在楼道里边。
We'll repeat what was just said, and basically there was a victim's daughter was in the airport or at the hotel, and she said that her phone started ringing from her dad's cell phone,
getting a call,
and the caller ID said dad on it.
Yep.
And she said, what should I do? And they said, pick it up. And when she went to pick it up, then the phone was dead. But apparently the story is that someone using her dad's phone, or her dad, tried to call, and this was what,
hours, maybe even
5 hours.
Yeah, it's at least it's hours after the.
I'd like to know what, because there are, okay, that means that the victim families are already at the hotel, so it had to be, more than 5 hours.
I don't recall exactly when, but so it was at least several hours afterwards. And then just regular people around the world were given access to satellite imagery. And this one lady that talks about it, it's on here, from Florida, finds what she thinks is something. And yeah, this is just one of those groups.
My hobby is photography, so I have an eye for detail. So I thought I could be a great person to help look for this airplane. And so I was handed the area pretty close to where the airplane first disappeared from radar in the south. And then finally, there's something white. And I was able to identify this piece as the nose cone.
Jack, that's pretty. Is she seeing what she wants to see, or are you in agreement with her on this picture here?
I can't completely agree with her, but I will say I'm. It's not really my discipline, I guess you kind of say. So
yeah,
for me, I think for me at that stage, I would have tried my best to have gotten what I think I see to one of these type satellite specialists or whatever, and let them decipher what I think I've found, maybe. But what is it really that she's seeing? I don't know if I can completely agree that I can decipher the nose cone or whatever. I don't know that I can go completely there, but.
So the next clip is the next one that you have, 7 days since disappearance.
Insanity.
All right, so let's watch this update, 7 days since last contact.
Okay.
So far, they're obviously here to protect the Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister?
MH370 did indeed turn back over Peninsular Malaysia before turning northwest. We are ending our operations in South China Sea.
I knew that what I had in the South China Sea was the debris of MH370.
I wanted to stop and look at one of her other comparison images. I don't see it. I'm not seeing that.
I don't see it either. That's what I'm saying. That to me, I think she did the right thing about raising the alert. She saw something.
Right.
She can't explain it. But to automatically bring up a schematic and try to make it fit, no, I can't.
Yeah. And plus, it's so wrecked at this point that how would it even hold together? And
that too.
That's completely discounting any other debris in the ocean. You know what I mean? You know how much debris is out in the ocean?
South. It must have crashed in the remote ocean. There's no way that anyone could have survived.
That the plane was deliberately flown off course.
This white police car has just raided the home of the captain of MH370.
The general consensus was that the pilots took the plane. The co-pilot was very wet behind the ears. So the focus was always on the captain of the flight. And what was done was aggressive and sophisticated.
The pilot's home flight simulator was removed by police to see.
Ooh, and the plot thickens, Jack.
Okay, what is going on with these guys? Because they're the ones in control of the plane. Was it murder my crew, murder my passengers, suicide plot by this captain? There was so much conspiracy stuff that went into that. And remember,
we have a clip on that. Do you want to watch that one, or do you want to watch something before that?
Yeah, I mean, I could just say it. There's a clip there at 43:52. We're not show it. The engineer cracks this problem of the flight path, and that's what they were talking about.
So I started this episode saying, God, that sounds like something a pilot would do. And we heard this already from another official. It kind of feels like the pilot committed mass murder.
Correct.
The pilot decided to commit mass murder-suicide. Shortly after 1 o'clock in the morning, Zahari is flying over the South China Sea, making the way to Beijing on a routine red-eye. MH370 is about to be handed over to the next set of air traffic controllers who are in Vietnam. He's now in a kind of gray zone, in between two areas of air traffic control. Why don't you go in the back and get me something? He turns off all of the electronics that make the plane visible to the outside world. Zahari is in complete control, and nobody knows anything about it. He grabs the yoke, and he pulls it into a hard left turn. Maybe he starts depressurizing the cabin. Is that the oxygen generators in these emergency masks only work for about 15 minutes. And soon the entire cabin is quiet.
It's definitely a believable scenario. I like the way that this reporter guy laid it out. Okay, a bunch of passengers would have a tough time doing this. A pilot could do this by himself. And I think that's what this story for me demonstrates most, is that if there's one person that could do it, the pilot could do it.
Yeah, he could probably pull something off, but as we found out more, this theory can't really work. But at this point in time, yeah, okay, it could.
It's a good theory, right? If you're gonna lay out a theory that one person did it alone, then that's a pretty good one. And then last thing in this episode, I'm just going to mention it, but not play the clip. And that is, there have been a handful of cases where pilots have killed, committed mass murder and suicide. So the next episode 2, is actually called The Hijack.
Flight MH17 took off from Amsterdam just after midday local time. It was bound for Kuala Lumpur.
I went, hold on, can't be another Malaysian plane.
Odds of losing 2 airplanes within a 6-month period is unprecedented.
I'm pretty comfortable with the pilot story until I see this.
Well, we're going to come to it here soon enough, but this gets off in some really, really out there conspiracy theories. And again, people can choose to believe whatever they want. There are some elements that we found out that, for me, don't make sense.
And then a year later, we're still looking for this plane?
Conspiracy theories about the missing plane are going viral.
In preparation for a terror attack.
Everyone's got an idea. Speculation is rife.
Another conspiracy, an outrageous insurance scam.
We're trying to sift through this waterfall of misinformation and nonsense.
Does this mean an alien was on the plane
and abducted everyone on board?
I think, when you get to the aliens, that's when it's over.
Yeah, hold up.
I'll just go back to the pilot again. It's the pilot. You know what I mean? Like, it's just too much.
But looking on, I don't know how much you want to show it, but this, there's this one French reporter that enters into this mix that really wanted to understand and found out, because so much blame had been put on the pilot. He did it. There were headlines. Right. He did it. So she really wanted to understand who this guy really is, and she did, and found okay, this guy's not what's being claimed in the media. It's came from a very loving family. They felt there's just absolutely no way. They talked to people that worked with him over the years, because this guy was a seasoned pilot. This wasn't a new guy. The pilot had been around long decades.
Right.
And they're all like, no, he's professional. He's not like that at all.
All right, let's watch that clip. The French reporter starts from scratch.
Okay.
The captain was made the potential villain, and I need to have my own understanding of who this man is. He may have had political motivations. He was a fan of Anwar Ibrahim.
Did Zahiri purposely down the plane to make a political statement?
That statement was not very clear if he was trying to make a statement. Was it?
Correct. Well, not to me, it's not. I agree.
Unless I'm missing some subtext because I'm not Malaysian and some cultural thing that I'm missing, I don't see the connection.
I don't either.
I do understand it, maybe even though irrational, like why people would blame the captain, because whether it was an accident or on purpose, he's maybe still the figurehead of blame, and we have to blame someone, right? It can't be an accident. That's the other thing that I think in today's modern conspiracy landscape is accidents are impossible. There's never been an accident.
Right.
Everything has been planned. Every accident has been planned. And so sometimes accidents happen. Sometimes people make a mistake. I don't know what mistake that would be to bring an airliner down like this. I mean, it'd be a pretty big mistake. So
maybe
that's
some catastrophic thing happened.
Catastrophic failure, right?
That's right. And boom, it's down. It's done.
Electrical, computer. What if the computer just failed?
Right.
We don't know,
We don't. How can one turn off the satellite system? And this goes back to this theory this reporter talked about in episode 1.
Finally, the Malaysians did release all of the data. If you wanted to turn it off and make it disappear from a screen, why would you turn the system back on? There is no on and off switch in the cockpit. The electronics bay is under an unlocked hatch at the front of the first class cabin.
This opens up your terrorist hijacking scenario.
It does open up a whole new arena.
Of Russian troops landing in Crimea.
MH370 happened in the context of Russia's invasion of Crimea in 20. It had the desirable effect of stopping anybody from talking about that.
It's a really good point. As far as conspiracy theories go, if that's what you're trying to do, then that was successful.
Hugely, wildly successful.
Wouldn't we be doing this more often then?
Well,
you know what I mean? Every time there was some bad news, an airline would fall out of the sky. You know what I mean? Like,
right. That draws back to these guys would have to know exactly when, within that 90-second window of when Malaysian Flight 370 was going to sign off of Malaysia before they contacted the Vietnam air traffic controllers and be ready to move. Come on.
You'd really have to know a lot of inner workings. Like there's got to be some, I don't know how many people would really know about that handoff and how to time that.
I guess I can somewhat understand this, but I can't agree with it.
At the end of episode 2, we have some debris found.
Yes.
So let's watch that. Maybe there's a little bit of hope yet.
We can tell you at this point that some debris has been found.
The piece was found on a rocky beach on the French territory in the
It is, in fact, a piece of a wing, perhaps a flap.
Is this a remnant of the missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370?
Well, if it's from a Boeing 777 and all the other ones are accounted for, why would you have debris of a 777 floating in the ocean when you missed one? So moving into episode 3, they start out talking more about that debris.
That an international team of experts conclusively confirm that the aircraft debris is indeed from MH370. MH370.
Okay, maybe.
Mention him. I don't know if we need to show his clip, but there is a guy who kind of takes it on his own to try and track down as many pieces as he possibly could.
And he's seemingly wildly successful, so suspicion kind of falls on him that he's connected to the Russians. He would make these announcements. He was going here because based on what oceanographers had told him, where this debris would potentially land and near Reunion Island and that set of islands there, he would go there, and within a couple hours, he's found something.
So to go back to the last clip that we played, was talking about this flatbron or this wreckage. Let's check out where the French reporter digs deeper into this, because that seemed like a really important plot point.
This was the first piece of debris found on the beach of Reunion Island. I started digging much deeper. It was missing its ID plate, which is either riveted or glued. There is only one instance. You do take off the ID plate from a plane part when a plane is dismantled.
Because there you go. Look at that image, folks. There's one sitting right there getting chopped up.
Well, this ID plate, I mean, there's certain aspects of car manufacturing and, as I said, plane manufacturing, where these items are stamped with, and these things are put on to not be able to be taken off.
So they do that strategically throughout the plane.
That's right. If the official narrative is to be believed, for me, this was a kind of a settling point, and it's important.
If the official narrative is to be believed, not a single one of these countries have been able to produce radar images of MH370. Another thing which I found very interesting, an airbase called Butterworth. Rogue B777 would fly over an airbase without some kind of alert. Nothing happens.
If the Malaysians are to be believed, this plane did a UE, comes back to Malaysia, and it flies anywhere near this Australian airbase. That's not the only military type whatever set up in that region. There are other ones too, and there's no radar telemetry ever provided by anyone, and that's a real problem for me. I mean, would they intentionally withhold that information if that's what happened? I can't go there. I just can't. Why would they withhold it? There were like 5 different countries that monitor that region, and I'm not talking about. I mean, including the Malaysians, and no one has any radar telemetry.
Well, maybe there's one explanation, and that's our next clip, with 2.5 tons of electronic cargo delivered under escort that was not X-rayed. Maybe that's a way to divert the radar.
I've probably missed it, but I don't think it was identified who delivered these electronics, these batteries, and whatever sophisticated electronic material. But yeah, it's interesting.
2.5 tons of electronics listed as walkie-talkies, radio accessories. This cargo had been loaded on MH370 without having been scanned.
Yeah.
Is it odd or isn't it? I couldn't tell you.
I don't work in the industry, so I'm not sure if it's odd that it wasn't X-rayed. I don't know. I would think
it says there were no available X-ray machines. They decided not to test it. So there were no available machines.
I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying, like, you have to question everything, and
sure. Yeah, but I think it's important to mention, this theory about somebody going down into the avionics bay and taking control of the plane, that can't happen. Now, the communications and the satellite link can be turned off, but you cannot control that plane from the avionics bay.
You would still need access to the cockpit.
That's right. There were 2 American AWACS that were flying above MH370, and these things not only have great radar capability, now they're being told they have great jamming capability. So if they decided to, it gets into this sealed cargo, these electronics.
2 US AWACS planes were involved. Their jamming capabilities are phenomenal. To completely jam the communication system of MH370.
But the problem with that is they would still need someone in the cockpit to go along with their plan.
The theory is that the Americans didn't want whatever these electronics were being delivered to Beijing, China, because it's off limits. Because there's certain electronics that is off limits to ship from the U.S. to China. Allegedly, this theory was that the Americans, jammed them, called them however they could electronically, said, "Look, you need to land here. Offload. You're not taking this cargo to China." Pilot says, "Screw you, not doing it." And allegedly, the theory is that they were blown up to keep that cargo from landing in China. Don't think I could go there. Do I believe that AWACS have great radar jamming capability? I do.
Yeah.
But I don't think that happened. I just don't. I think this reporter kind of demonstrates that official narrative was a fabrication. I'll put a question mark on that. Everybody can make up their own mind. I don't know.
The most important part of my job has been to demonstrate that the official narrative was a fabrication.
The accusations that somehow Inmarsat fabricated or manipulated the data are simply wrong. The data's the data.
There'd be debris all over the South China Sea, the Gulf of Thailand. That means that the radar turning back is wrong. That means that the Inmarsat data is wrong. That basically denies all the evidence. I mean, there's no way that you could get China, America, Australia, England, Malaysia, Vietnam all together to have a big conspiracy to cover up what happened to the plane. Fortunately, some people are so into their own little theories that they seem to be losing objectivity.
This goes back to all the other military assets in that region that provided nothing as far as radar. Nothing. That becomes a real problem for me. But again, because it doesn't matter if the transponder was turned off of MH370, it's still a blip that's visible to their radar. So if it turned around and came back, where's that data at? Something weird as shit went on, at least as far as that's concerned. But at the same time, do I think it was hijacked? I don't. Do I think aliens took it? Well,
can you
no.
fly a 777 low enough that it would be under radar?
Well, you got to get under, I think it's 1,500 feet, 1,000 feet, something like that.
When people say there has to be wreckage, there has to be, like, the ocean is so big. And if you crashed a plane at 800, 600, what are they, 600 miles an hour?
Yeah.
There ain't going to be much left.
Well, even if, those seas can be pretty rough, just like, any other.
And they can get mixed up pretty quick. And there's already debris out in the ocean. Sorry to break it to you. It's not perfect and beautiful. There's a lot of debris out there already.
It's going to get scattered pretty quickly.
Here with the last clip where the official search ends.
The search is over this morning for the missing Malaysian airliner.
We need to suspend the search.
Voice 370, a support group for next of kin, said in a statement, commercial planes cannot just be allowed to disappear without a trace.
I don't know. I think it's as implausible as it sounds. I don't think that we're perfect yet. And I don't think that, this demonstrates it. And I think that's why so many people want to go to the conspiracy route, because there must be some grand explanation. Yeah, there must be some, because it can't be this simple. It can't just they crashed and they couldn't find him. That can't be that.
Right.
It's too simple.
That's right. I agree with you 100%.
Maybe they just crashed and they couldn't find him because it was not where you thought the plane was going to be.
That's pretty much exactly what I think happened. But once you step off into the alien category,
just gonna say aliens.
Well, you stepped off the merry-go-round for me.
Even though it sounds like covering all of our oceans today seems insane, I do feel like someday we'll look back on a case like this and be like, that couldn't happen. That could never happen in 2080.
Right.
Right. That could never happen in 2080. Our satellites are too sophisticated. I do believe that, but we're not there yet. And
No.
you know, we don't have a perfect view of every blade of grass on planet Earth at all times, you know. So
Not yet. Not yet.
not yet. Well, I really enjoyed this one. You know,
Yeah.
it kept me going back and forth. Oh, maybe it's this one, maybe it's this guy, and I'm pretty gullible sometimes. You know, I'm gonna let myself be taken by the documentary. I'm not gonna try to fight it. I'm just gonna be, oh, maybe it is the pilot. Oh, maybe it is this, you know, maybe it is terrorist. So in that aspect, the documentary was kind of all over the place, but well constructed. The family kind of aspect, the victim aspect to it is really tough, and it makes it so real. I mean, that's why this is a good documentary, because it's a true story, and that's one of the reasons I like documentaries, because it's tangible. It's a real thing that happened to someone or many people.
Yeah. That, you know, no matter how far, you know, many of us could consider, we've talked about these theories that were out there and all that. At the heart of it, you have, you know, 200 and almost 300 grieving families with no answers. Not really. If you get down to it, they just want their loved ones with them in whatever way that they, you know, celebrate their end of life, cremation, burial, whatever, or at least an answer to what really happened. Even an answer would be enough for, I think, a
You
lot of
know,
them.
something significant that says, hey man, we
Tangible.
found an oil slick, or, you know, something that, but
We
you know,
found
unfortunately,
we found an engine off this plane. It's here. Something.
I
They
think,
have nothing.
but I mean, planes go missing all the time. Think about it. Like, think of all the stories in the Bermuda Triangle, for example. Like, it happens. Boats go missing, planes go missing. But a commercial jetliner that's so well tracked and has all this technology and is supposed to be, you know, a paid for service. It's not a private guy flying you. It's not your uncle flying you. You know what I mean? It's just like professional. Everything should be on the up and up, and so
tracked and locked, and
you'd think, but I just, I don't have the answer, but I don't think going down the conspiracy rabbit hole is the answer for me on this one.
Not on this one. No, I don't either. I think it was a catastrophic failure. It went down. Nothing was found.
Yeah. Well, let's put it to bed then, folks. That's what happened. You heard it here first.
We solved it. We solved it. Oh, I definitely think this one is a 9 out of 10 stars for sure.
We're gonna go 9 out of 10. Okay, I like that. That gives Jack 9 out of 10 stars.
It's just really sad for me. It's really sad. It really is.
I think I mentioned this earlier in another episode, where it's so hard, because we're watching these documentaries and we know on the end that there are victims, and so it is hard, and but it's important to just remember, like, that we're talking about real people's lives, and as long as we acknowledge that, I think it's on the up and up.
Yeah, I have to, because at the end of the day, even if we had some answers, these are still real families that are suffering, lost their loved ones, their children, their wives, their brothers, whatever. We have to remember them. We have to.
Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy our discussions. You can become a member and really help the channel grow as well, so check that out. But that's it for today. I'm Jeff.
I'm Jack.
And we'll see you guys on the next one.